views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
And hello and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren Jaime, and today we're going to update you on what's happening in and around our borough, as well as across New York City. Coming up on today's show, we go front and center with several issues. Coming up, we'll discuss with an attorney about the recent extension in the eviction moratorium, how tenants have been given a reprieve. Then we'll sit down with Fresh Direct's Vice President of Public Affairs, discussing the initiatives the organization is doing, helping families across New York City. And then later on, we'll learn how one medical service actually adapted its services in providing more COVID-19 testing to organizations. We'll give you more details on that a little bit later on in the show. And then also, we'll learn how one not-for-profit organization is providing quality school programming in underserved areas of New York City. And then finally, we'll speak with an author on how she aims for her collection of poems as well as short stories to help others feel understood, safe, and loved. We got a great show coming up for you, so stay tuned because all this and much more is heading your way. We're officially open. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, and you're watching Open, a live and interactive program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to your TV set. We also want to welcome our viewers on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, as Open is being broadcast live simultaneously on the MNN's channel. We also invite you to stay connected to us on all of our social media platforms at BronxNet TV. Well, several things have been going on throughout the course of the past week since we last met. We're going to take you through a few of them with our Bronx updates. Bowling is front and center across New York State. Governor Cuomo announced New Yorkers are allowed to go bowling in alleys and museums, as well as indoor cultural institutions with certain restrictions. Bowling alleys can reopen at no more than 50% capacity. Bowlers and staff will have to wear face coverings, and every other lane will be closed. Additionally, parties will have to stay within their party at their lane, and any food or alcohol served must be ordered and delivered at each lane. New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo said low-risk indoor cultural activities such as museums, aquariums, and art centers will also be allowed to open on August 24th. Those institutions will have to remain at or below 25% occupancy. They'll also have to implement protocols such as preset staggered entry, face coverings, as well as mandatory traffic flow must be controlled. Well, in other news, Hunger Free New York City is opening a new office in the Bronx to help residents enroll in federally funded food assistance programs, including SNAP as well as WIC. Our BronxNet reporter Ashley Tiffany was there, and she brings us the story right now.
Hunger Free New York City, a division of nonprofit Hunger Free America, is opening a new office next Monday in the Bronx. CEO of Hunger Free America, Joel Berg, says a Bronx location was vital to help underserved communities enroll in federally funded food assistance programs, including SNAP.
We're going to open our new office at 938 Sheridan Avenue. It's quite close to Yankee Stadium, so conveniently located. And the purpose of this new office is specifically to allow people to get help to access a SNAP and WIC.
Hunger-Free New York City Multilingual Benefits Access Team will offer pre-screenings, application assistance, and recertification help. The need for federal food assistance programs is greater now more than ever. Hunger-Free New York City stated in April 38% of parents skipped or cut back portions of meals for their children because they lacked finances for food. With schools starting next month, Berg thinks,
we know whether schools go back or not, there's still going to be a massive need. Many people are still going to be unemployed. Many people are still going to have low wages. And so therefore, many people are going to be eligible for SNAP to feed themselves and their families. And if they're pregnant or have kids under 5, they'll be eligible for WIC.
Berg also says undocumented residents that have children who are U.S. citizens are eligible to receive SNAP benefits for their kids.
We also have information about home-delivered meals the city is providing, and so we want to make sure everyone knows about the full array of ways they can get free food.
You can visit hungerfreeamerica.org or call the Hunger Hotline at 1-866-3-HUNGRY to obtain emergency food near you. Reporting for BronxNet, Ashley Tiffany.
And thank you, Ashley. Well, Open does have more show coming up. We want you to stay with us. Coming up after the break, another very special guest. We'll be back in a few.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people. Avoid crowds. Stay home if you can. Wash your hands frequently. Learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
And welcome back. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused many tenants to lose their income and also face possible eviction. However, days after a pause on eviction set to expire in New York, the State Court of New York actually extended a moratorium through October the 1st for residential tenants. And the question is, what exactly does this actually mean for tenants going forward? The Bronx, New York City, a lot of renters. So what does it actually mean? Joining us now to share a little bit more is the partner at David A. Gallo and Associates, Robert Link, who comes back and talks to us a little bit more about the eviction moratorium. And Robert, good to have you.
Daren, thanks a lot. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, no worries. Listen, I want to get to it, right? As we said, this eviction now moratorium extends out into October the 1st. For many renters, it's a breath of fresh air. They're breathing a sigh of relief. But really, some people feel as though all this is doing is actually kicking the can down the street.
Well, that's exactly what it is doing. Quite literally, it's kicking the can down the street. When I was on with you last time, I said that I don't really see a whole lot going on in the year 2020. I think most of the cases are going to be dealt with in 2021 that relate to the pandemic. That's what we're seeing. And, you know, they're kicking the can down the proverbial road, but this is a very difficult circumstance. Again, the housing courts were already busting at the seams before the pandemic. Now, added to that, you have 15, 25, I've heard up to 30% of renters not paying their rent. So we have to take all those cases and throw them into a mix already to a system that was busting out at the seams. Now, what the court said this week is that they're going to start to open things up. Okay, they're going to start to do conferences. They're going to let things slowly move forward. Now, in the residential context, great news. October 1st is going to be the first date where they can actually execute warrants. But if you're pre-pandemic default, you didn't pay your rent before March 17th, and someone already brought an eviction case against you, before they continue the case on October 1st, the court has to schedule a conference to see if you're eligible for any assistance, to see if the case can be worked out. And if you're not available for that conference, or if you have health concerns, there's probably an opportunity for you actually to delay that conference, to appear remotely. So that's always available. If you're not, if March 17th, and that's the default, and a case has not been brought against you yet, then we're looking after October 1st to actually bring those petitions and get you in court. And then you're still going to have those conferences. So we're talking well into 2021 before we've evaluated your defenses, before you've had your conference, and before your case starts to really substantively move forward. So you do have a nice respite to kind of gather your breath and see where things are headed.
Look,
go ahead.
I want to just jump in and ask the question, because as you talk about these conferences, we're hearing words about, settlement meetings and what these conferences actually entail. So when you say conferences, what exactly goes on in the scope of these meetings?
Well, usually in the landlord-tenant context, you have your landlord attorney, you have a tenant, sometimes you have an attorney representing the tenant, and you sit down with a law clerk and you try to discuss a reasonable, pragmatic scenario where everybody's happy, where you can either repay the rent arrears, get back on track, or work out a schedule even for the litigation. That's really going to be difficult to do because we want to avoid courtroom activities. So what the courts are saying is that they're going to reach out to the parties. They're going to try to set up Zoom conferences. But Daren, as you know as well as I, not everybody's accustomed to just set up Zoom conferences. Not everyone has the technology. Not everybody has Wi-Fi, cameras, and whatnot. So it's going to be a struggle, and it's going to take a long time to get through all these cases.
Yeah, the backlog is what we talked about on the last time that we got together and talked about this backlog. With the kicking it down the can to October the 1st, what are we looking at in terms of, is this going to increase the backlog? Is this going to help the backlog? What do you predict?
Well, what they hope is that landlords are going to play ball. They're going to make deals with their tenants. If you remember from last time, there was a law passed during the legislative session in Albany, the Tenant Safe Harbor Relief Act. And what that said is if you owed money because you weren't able to pay your rent during the pandemic, they would take those 3-6 months of rent, and the landlord would be able to get a money judgment for those unpaid months of rent, but they wouldn't actually be able to evict you on that basis. So if you can prove that you had a decrease in income as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, that's a defense to eviction. That's not a defense to actual payment. So that is going to give the tenants a whole lot of leverage to come into court and make a deal. And hopefully the idea is that that's going to incentivize the landlords to play ball, make a deal, maybe work out some sort of resolution that works for everyone, and avoid court. At least that's what the courts are hoping at this point.
Yeah, let's look at what some state lawmakers are actually putting into effect. They're trying to get this law passed, and I want you to get your perspective on it. State lawmakers are trying to actually pass a series of bills where tenants can actually see their rents canceled for the duration of the New York's health emergency, and then as well as evictions being prohibited for a full year after the state lifts its final pandemic-related restrictions. If this law passes, obviously a lot of favor is given towards tenants because, listen, they've got a hard time. But then if you're the landlord and you're a person that's depending on this money, this puts you in a whole income debacle.
It does. It creates a whole lot of questions. I do not expect the cancel rent bills to pass. I think there'll be some discussion. I think you'll see some lawmakers push for it. But the problem, you touched on it, it creates a whole lot of issues. Number one, there's a constitutional issue. Typically, when you have a contract between two consenting adults, the government doesn't get involved in the middle of it, right? And try to remake the terms of that contract. Here we're dealing with a pandemic, so there's some flexibility possibly, but to the scope that we're saying everybody has a rent holiday, well, some people are working and they can actually pay their rent. Some people live in NYCHA buildings. Will they be excused from paying their rent? Actually, the bill that I think you're referring to would set a fund aside for those public housing tenants and allow them to help pay their rent. In addition to that, you have landlords, small-time landlords who are struggling. That legislation actually sets a pool of money aside to pay those landlords. But where is the state of New York going to get that money? They're already facing declining revenues, declining tax revenues. as a consequence of COVID-19. I don't see it happening. You have seen more progressive lawmakers move into the assembly ranks, so there's going to be a lot more pressure to do something, but I don't think it's going to be this bill.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about what New Yorkers have been saying. I've talked to some people who are New Yorkers who are really worried about this whole eviction process, given the fact that a lot of people have been without work and out of income. You've got people filing unemployment in massive numbers, unprecedented numbers federally and across the state. But then there comes the case of, okay, if I don't have the money, I can't stay there. And there is these evictions, which also leads into another crisis, which deals with another perspective, which is New York City's homelessness issue. If these cases are not negotiated, the anticipation is that there may be possibly a real increase when it comes to homelessness in our city. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, that's the logical continuation of this. The good news is, in kicking the can down the road, we're able to kind of evaluate these issues on a month-by-month basis. There's not going to be a massive amount of evictions in the year 2020. We'll see what happens in early 2021, but I would imagine there's going to be, in New York City, a 6 to 12-month timeline for a lot of these evictions, to have these conferences, to get the people in court that actually need to go into court to accomplish those conferences and to move this process along. So I think we're not going to have so many evictions in the near term, but that homelessness problem is something that does need to be considered. It's eventually going to, as long as we keep kicking down the can down the road, it's eventually going to pop up.
Yeah, real quickly, I got to wrap this up, but I want to get the chance to talk to you because this week, really important, commercial, when you talk about commercial buildings and those who are commercial tenants as well, some legislation coming down the pike too?
Well, as far as the relief for commercial tenants, what the administrative order says is we're not really helping. We're going out on a limb to protect residential tenants as much as possible, but commercial evictions start today. And so the commercial tenant might be getting papers in the mail, scheduling commercial evictions procedures. They're not entitled to the same conference, although it's likely that some of the New York City courts are going to be extending an opportunity to the commercial tenants to work out a case. I think the best argument for the commercial tenant is going to be, listen, I'm a barbershop, I'm a restaurant. The government forced me to, prevented me from being able to use my property for the reason that was stipulated in the lease. As a consequence, I should be excused from paying the rent because I didn't get the benefit of my bargain. That's going to be something that you want to interpose in an answer. You're going to want to answer the landlord-tenant petition, the eviction petition, and you're going to want to litigate and hire an attorney and make sure to appear in court.
All right, Robert Link, we got to leave it there. Our guest partner at David Gallo and Associates. Robert, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Daren.
All righty. Of course, we got to bring him back, and he'll continue to give us more information as we talk about this eviction moratorium. And as we kick the can down the road a little bit more, we're going to need some more counsel with regards to this. So, of course, we'll be seeing Robert in the future. That about wraps up for this segment. Listen, we've got more show. Stay with us. Open will continue coming up right after this. Welcome back. COVID-19 has changed the way that people have actually thought about shopping food as well as also cooking. And that's cooking for their families, from the sudden and significant need for grocery delivery to the newfound comforts of homemade meals. Well, the question is, how do you deal in a time such as this? In response to that, Fresh Direct has also launched initiatives assisting families that are actually in need of groceries. Joining us now to share more is the Vice President of Fresh Direct, Larry Scott Blackmon. And Larry, good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Good. And it comes at a very crucial time. When we talk about what's going on across New York City, of course, we know that New York City is dealing with a lot of food insecurity. So I know that Fresh Direct has partnered up with the borough presidents of New York City. So share with us a little bit about the new initiative with Fresh Direct in New York City.
Absolutely. And thank you for having us, Daren. Fresh Direct realized very early on in this pandemic, as many New Yorkers did, that many families were severely affected by the pandemic from a food perspective. And so in partnership with each of New York City's 5 borough presidents, we launched an effort that we named the 5 Borough Food Drive, where Fresh Direct initially, at no expense to anyone but the company, Fresh Direct would donate 500 boxes of food per day, per borough, 5 days per week, 5 days a week. And so the traction with that program was just phenomenal. New Yorkers loved it. And after the first month, we were looking for partners to continue it, to keep it going. And thanks to the city of New York and Mayor de Blasio, the 5 borough presidents, and really Bronx leaders all across the borough, Fresh Direct has been moving forward with that program. And to date, we've donated over 250,000 boxes of food to families in need.
That's a major gap filler for a lot of families across New York City. We know that many are going hungry. Many people have lost their jobs. What have you heard through what's been going on through COVID-19 with regards to food insecurity and hunger?
You know, some of the stories that I've heard have been really tragic. Families are struggling to make ends meet. And it is our goal through this program that families have one less item to worry about. Many of the items in our boxes were, fresh produce items, shelf-sustainable items. And I visited our touch points throughout the entire program. I visited many of them. And then again, some of the stories you hear are just tragic. But the beauty, right, the positive side, the converse is that some of the stories, the hugs and, even socially distanced hugs, and the thank yous that we receive from families who come to rely and depend on this, they touch your heart. And so we've been extremely grateful to be able to touch hearts in that manner.
Talking to us about Fresh Direct Express, obviously getting out there, getting connected with families is the initiative that's out there. But for people who don't know, define Fresh Direct Express.
So absolutely. So we've launched Fresh Direct Express, which is obviously a faster way, real time, in a couple of hours method of receiving your food. You can just go on the website, and we're growing that out, and we're realizing that, people want their food as quickly as possible. And so we launched that effort, and it's getting off to a strong start.
Yeah. Filling that need. I mean, obviously Fresh Direct has been around for a long time, but give us, as a spokesperson for Fresh Direct, what this actually means to be able to partner with local government and also city residents in this pandemic season, which has been something that has been, of course, unprecedented. And many people are out there saying, listen, we just need help, but you guys are actually doing a great job of putting food into the mouths of those who are hungry.
Well, here's the thing. The city of New York has been doing a phenomenal job of working with many partners to provide meals that were already prepared. All right, so prepared meals. But what many elected leaders and many community leaders, and what we even found out is kind of like you and I, if you're like us, we like to prepare our food. And so there was a need for groceries, and people became attached to it. They wanted to add their own flavor to a meal. So instead of receiving that prepared meal, what we're doing in partnership with the elected leaders and community groups and activists and NYCHA tenant leaders, what we're doing is we're providing an opportunity for individuals to add their own flavor to the meals, right? To add what makes it special, what makes it culturally appealing to them by giving them the ingredients that they use to cook for themselves. So this has been a phenomenal experience. And I mentioned that we've especially touched our NYCHA complexes. We've been in over 30% of the NYCHA complexes in every borough. And that is really what warms our heart as a company, is to know that, for individuals that may not have viewed Fresh Direct as a first option, they're receiving that box. They're being introduced to the highest quality product, and they love what they're receiving. And we're happy to provide it.
Somebody doesn't know about Fresh Direct. I mean, they may be watching this segment for the very first time and say, okay, Fresh Direct. So we always, in journalism, say we assume our audience knows nothing. So for somebody who may not know about Fresh Direct, give us a little bit of background.
Absolutely. So Fresh Direct is a born and bred New York City company. We've been around now for a little over 15, 16 years. We were first based in Long Island City. We built a state-of-the-art facility here in the Port Morris section of the Bronx. We employ thousands of individuals, well over 1,000 individuals from the borough of the Bronx. I just finished speaking to a group that we just hired. We've been hiring throughout. Our employees, Fresh Direct employees, are heroes. Throughout the course of this pandemic, New Yorkers and individuals in the regions we serve, and for those who don't know, we hug the East Coast. We're from DC up to Southern Connecticut. We were out there in the course of this pandemic, and our team members, our staff members are heroes. I've been in the office for the most part the entire time, as many of our team members have. We are extraordinarily proud to be the leading e-commerce grocer in the Northeast, and dare I say, in the country.
Yeah. And so when we talk about the Northeast, a lot of people across the Northeast are taking advantage of Fresh Direct. Talk to us about what do you feel makes the difference for Fresh Direct?
What makes the difference for us is our quality. We know where our food comes from. And unlike many other neighborhoods, when you go into a supermarket, you don't know how long that food's been sitting out there. You don't know how long the produce has been out front for you. You don't really know where it came from. We source our product directly, and in most part, directly from farmers. We have farmers that drive their product to our site. And so we offer the highest quality. You talk about fish that literally was on a boat maybe a day or two ago, and it's now in your home. And so people want to know that what they're putting in their bodies, right? You are what you eat, right? You're putting in the highest quality, best sourced food product when you shop with Fresh Direct.
Yeah. And when we talk about Fresh Direct actually helping the community in this pandemic season, as we talked about, it's partnering with all 5 New York City borough presidents, making sure that food goes out to hungry people throughout the course, that nobody can really get left behind in this term. Using that phrase, nobody getting left behind, making sure that every gap is actually being filled. But when we talk about that gap being filled, the pandemic has definitely been something that has been painful to a lot of people. Give us some of the stories that you're hearing from some of your people with boots on the ground, and maybe those who have actually been recipients, as to what this has actually meant for them.
Again, I've heard stories that a range of different stories, anywhere from the economic impact to a family member, or a family possibly losing a loved one, actually, and losing that source of support to be able to put food on the tables. You'll be surprised at some of the stories that we've heard. We've partnered with organizations, and I mentioned the NYCHAs and the elected officials and community groups, the lines of people who depend on this. This struggle, against COVID and its impact is really, it's hitting people harder than I think most folks know. And there's really, sometimes you lose sight of how to effectively quantify the impact. I've shed tears with some of these families, seeing them on the line, seeing what this means. And in some cases, this box provides sustainability for days. We wish that there was more that we can do, because the need is out there. We understand the economic impact. We realize that, we see it. People that work for us, our employees, live in the most neighborhoods that are most impacted by COVID. And they come in and talk to us, and they tell us, about the reception that they receive just walking through the community, wearing a Fresh Direct shirt or a Fresh Direct hat, and someone saying, hey, that box, we received your box. Or they see the box on stations such as your own. It means something to them. It says that they have just a little bit more support than they need to worry about on any other day.
Yeah. For people who want to find out more, what do they do?
You can visit our website, freshdirect.com. We have pages there. We have been working with a number of different organizations, including New York Common Pantry. We've been working with the Arc of Justice, you name it. And I just want to really give a big thank you to the borough of the Bronx, to BronxNet, to the Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz Jr., and to the countless Bronx elected officials who have partnered with us. They can tell you the number of phone calls that we receive from them. I have text messages. I actually took a snapshot of my text messages one day and showed it to the entire staff just to show them the amount of love that we receive and thankfulness from this borough and beyond. But I'm really highlighting the Bronx. If it wasn't for the Bronx, we wouldn't be here. We appreciate it, we cherish it, and we thank you, Daren, for giving us an opportunity to talk with you today about this program.
Yeah, Larry Scott Blackmon, thank you so much now for the great work that Fresh Direct is doing. Our community is in need, and our community is really hurting. And where people can actually fill those gaps and really bridge that gap to bring love, love, food, and the supplies is really needed, in this time. And so thank you so much for the great work that you've done in Fresh Direct in making sure that Bronxites and New Yorkers all across New York City are well taken care of. Thanks a lot, Larry.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All righty, Larry Scott Blackmon is our guest here on Open. Want you to stay with us. We do have more show coming up. We'll be right back in a few.
It looks bleak. It feels bleak. But the city isn't shut down because our public services keep working. In spite of, and in the face of, the dangers, we can count on them. And to keep them working and funded, now and in the future, we need to be counted. Self-respond now to the 2020 census at my2020census.gov.
And thank you for staying with us. Paradocs has actually provided some on-site medical consulting at some of the nation's most largest publicized events. Now, with events canceled during the pandemic, Paradocs is instead present on construction sites, offices, and essential businesses throughout the country and New York City. And we're pleased to be joined by none other than the Chief Executive Officer of Paradocs Worldwide, who's going to tell us a little bit more, Alex Pollak. And we thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and so it's great to have this conversation talking about the work of Paradocs. And so for people who don't know, acquaint us a little bit with Paradocs.
So our company is relatively young. We started back in 2011. I myself am a paramedic in New York City since 1998. And we provide event medical services for events throughout the country. A lot of music festivals, sporting events. We're based here in Brooklyn. So we provide basically on-site services. So we build mobile hospitals. We're at a bunch of the stadiums. And then we travel throughout the country doing music festivals and large sporting events. And we can have anything from a single EMT to basically build out a full emergency room with emergency room doctors, nurses, which basically alleviates the burden on the local municipality, especially in a rural area that doesn't have that much infrastructure.
Yeah. And so when we talk about COVID-19, obviously a lot of people have been affected. So for you, what kind of shift have you had to make with COVID-19?
So that's a good question. Our last large event, because we're really based off the event industry, our last large event was in Florida, the first weekend of March. It actually was a COVID-free event, but it was before the world kind of fell apart. So we have, when we came back to New York, COVID just started rearing its head. And we, as a rapidly deployable medical solution, and since we're all medical workers and licensed in New York, we helped with the FEMA response. A bunch of our doctors worked in the emergency departments. We really helped wherever we can. I personally went and worked on an ambulance because I'm still a New York State paramedic. And then we started doing a lot of essential businesses screening and health questions and health screenings and temperature checks at a lot of essential businesses that had to remain open, like Fresh Direct, ShopRite, government buildings. And so we were basically like now the new security for entering the business. And as the phases started to reopen, phase 1, phase 2, we started kind of putting ourselves into that infrastructure as the first line of safety. So whether it's temperature checks or health questionnaires, health screenings, construction sites, Right now, we're really big into movie and film production as they're starting to reopen. And we're also doing a lot of COVID testing. So we're doing that we're doing quite a lot of COVID tests these days. I do not want to swab anyone's nose or brain anymore.
Really?
Totally. Yeah. It's been interesting. Yes.
But being a part of that, I mean, honestly, we laugh, but it's so needed, right? And so what's it like for you being able to bridge that gap, fill that need in a time when, we need testing and we need to keep our community safe?
That's a great question, especially now with, the higher end clientele. Construction sites were one of the first things that opened after essential businesses like supermarkets and everything else. Fresh Direct people still have to get their food. But construction in New York is a very big industry, and those had to open. People had to come back to work. But now in the film and production and fashion industry, it's super important. People want to return to work, and they're taking all the safety precautions that they possibly can. And, having a medical person on site besides for temperature checks, we're doing, besides for your general public that we're testing, the contracts we have with testing the general public, like nursing homes or some of the other private contracts we have or public contracts. We're doing also a lot of testing, whether it's lab-based PCR or on-site testing for these productions, because a lot of people, first of all, want to be able to work in a very safe environment, but also people who have, might not have ventured out of their house or might not have had the need to venture out of their house, celebrities or people in the high-end movie and production world are now doing it for the first time, but they want to make sure that everyone is safe and they're doing it properly.
Talk about your organization. I mean, we talk about the growth. You said you're relatively new, but yet and still, when you talk about revenue, almost $5 million in revenue before COVID-19, right? And that's a major accomplishment, given the fact that you have not yet, have you crossed the 10-year threshold? No.
Nope, not yet. We're getting there.
Yeah.
It definitely took a lot of years off my life. I can tell you that much. It's not easy starting your own business. I had more hair.
Yeah.
My beard wasn't white. I think COVID might have had a little to do with that, but
with everybody.
Yeah. The good thing is, at least I didn't do stress eating, so I definitely didn't get the COVID-19. I lost weight. Excuse me. It's been, we definitely lost our event industry, and that was a huge portion of our business. We've always done the smaller things, even if it was something small from like, a small, I mean, might be nationally televised event, but it wouldn't be large on the medical side. If you have 100 security guards, you usually would have one paramedic. But the large sporting venues and music festivals have basically disappeared. So that was a heavy hit on our revenue stream. Right now, we're getting hired by industries we've always been involved in, but on the sidelines. So we would be mostly for a fashion show when the show is actually going on, but still photo shoots or just a photo, small production would not normally have a paramedic with 20 people. Now they all have paramedics. And I don't know if it's coming from SAG or a regulatory agency, or it's just precautions and people doing things in a careful way, but the industry has just expanded like crazy. We're getting requests for all over the country, literally all over the country. We're doing hundreds and hundreds of shoots, if not close to 1,000 shoots a day. I mean, a week. Sorry, a week.
Right. And so before we go, I didn't ask the question about, well, how do you come up with your staff, and how do you make that happen?
So, doctors are doctors, paramedics are paramedics, nurses are nurses. They're licensed, in whatever state, but they usually have a day-to-day job, and it's pretty boring. It's not the most glamorous job. I know now healthcare workers are the new heroes, but, you never get to go to the Met Gala as a doctor. I don't care how famous you are.
Right.
So we've always had a glamorous side of the job. So we've never had an issue with staffing. We've always had tens of thousands of applications because everyone wants to work the events and the cool shows. So it's never been an issue getting the personnel. It's more like it's come to us as we gain social media following, as we got, you see the wall behind me. I love my wall of fame. The more media we get, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great work that you guys are doing at Paradox. We got to leave it there, but I want to tell people, definitely, thank you, first of all, Alex. And I want to tell people, if you want more information, please go to their website. Their website is www.paradoxworldwide.com. Alex, again, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Daren. Thank you, Alex, so much for the opportunity. It was a pleasure.
Great.
Everyone be safe. Get swabbed.
Yeah. That's right. Be safe, get swabbed, but not by Alex. All right.
Yeah, I'm too tired too.
I know, brothers been working hard. Thank you. All right, we're taking a quick break. We got more shows. Stay with us. We'll come right back.
Thank you.
Right after this.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Welcome back. Directions for Youth is a community-based not-for-profit organization that's providing an engaging quality of out-of-school and in-school programs in underserved areas of New York City to help children and youth actually reach their full potential. Joining us now to share more and provide further insight is the program director of the Directions for Our Youth Cornerstone program at Butler Community Center, Mr. Clyde Thompson. And Clyde, good to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you. Yes. So as we talk about Directions for Youth, obviously, as we said, an organization that really looks to impact youth. A little bit more about your organization.
Well, I've been here now 2 years with Directions for Youth, though I have served young people in various communities throughout the Bronx for now about 34 years. But Directions for Youth is a new kind of energy in terms of youth development in my experience, because one, it has a myriad of programs. It has about 10 sites, school-based programs. Cornerstone is one community center, community center organization that provides service. So we're going right directly to the community at Butler houses, but the other programs are serving hundreds of children in some of our local schools throughout the Bronx area. Great bunch of young people that we have working for the agency. Real highly energetic, highly creative. It's one odd thing about Directions for Our Youth. Many, as diverse as we may be, with people of all kind of racial and ethnic backgrounds, it seems like many of the staff have the same kind of personality and commonality of purpose in terms of how we approach young people with gentility, with purpose, with direction, with leadership. And that's what I find particularly refreshing about working for the agency. And, we've had some, and over the years, there's been some difficulties the agency has endured, but nevertheless, the direction in terms of how it handles young people with a very sensitive, caring, purposeful approach, I think gives a certain type of uniqueness. And it causes me to really reshape and rethink how I serve at the Butler Cornerstone, because it's the same kind of energy you need to really address a lot of different issues when you're running a Cornerstone.
Well, I want to talk about youth for a minute, because obviously they're impacted highly. And this time with COVID-19 and the social unrest that is going on, I know there's a lot of things that they're really trying to deal with and wrestle with, and some of which you could say they've never even ever experienced before in their lifetime.
Never.
But I know that you guys are doing some work in terms of pushing young people to actually becoming change agents. So talk to us about that push, if you will, of trying to impact them in such a way that they do become change agents.
Well, that comes primarily from we have a program, we have a group called Urban Ambassadors. And our urban ambassadors are really the change agents in the community. They set the whole tone, one, how young people get along in our community. They set the tone for how young people need to feel a sense of We need to contribute to what happens at the agency and throughout the community. I can tell you, it's funny you brought that up because we are operating our summer programs with nothing but young people. There's only 2 adults in the building, and that's myself and another young lady, Demetria Gibbs, and she's at the office right now. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, the person answering the door, the young people sanitizing the place, the young people doing the filing, distributing the mask and the food are all young people. And I can tell you, the thing about food, the one thing about we give out food, they really understand firsthand the humility that comes with people who are food insecure. When they have to hand a bag of food to an elderly person or a person they know in their community, they sense the respect and appreciation people have for help in general. And, you know, it's a very humbling kind of experience when you see people you know, they're not coming down there, they wouldn't come and stand on the line in front of their building, in front of their other neighbors, if in fact they really didn't need what we have to offer. So it starts with our food program, our mask and sanitizer program, all run by young people. You know, they let me know, Mr. Thompson, Miss so-and-so need a mask, or a young person not wearing a mask. And I'm using them as real ambassadors to get other young people to wear the mask. Because some of our young people, they believe it, but the commitment that they need in terms of disciplining themselves to wear a mask every day is a super, super challenge.
Let me jump on the word commitment, because you talk about that word commitment. It's a big thing to get young people, particularly, to commit during a time like this. But you've actually been able to do that. And one of the things I know that you've been able to do, you talked about the feeding program. And from what I understand, you've fed more than 75,000 people through this program with your young people. What's that like for you as well as them to be able to impact that many people in a time that so desperately needs when there's this food insecurity and this food shortage?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, just from a realistic standpoint, when you're giving out 1,000 meals a day, you need a lot of young people. Because past 40, standing up all day, carrying boxes, taking food up to people's home is no easy feat. After you hit 40 and above, you know, you need some fresh legs, and young people are that. And they enjoy that. They enjoy giving. They enjoy being a part of that change and making, and every time I talked about, say, we just did 35,000 last week, they're like, oh, wow, Mr. Thompson, we did that many. Yeah, we did that many. And there was a time we were getting 1,000 meals a day to give out 7 days a week. So, and 2 of those days, D4 is closed. So the only way for me to get that done is by young people who are volunteering and residents, or some adult residents, to come down and say, hey, Mr. Thompson, I'll help you give out the food. It's really amazing. It's not really amazing because, you know what, at the core of all of us, everyone likes to give. Everybody wants to do something. It's not, you know, you don't have to prod it out of them. They see it, you talk about it, you explain the purpose of it, and young people, for the 90% of them, want to be involved. Even our kids that's out there that are on the cups of some other kinds of experiences, they've asked me, Mr. Thompson, I'll come help give out the food. I said, you're gladly welcome. I never deny them an opportunity to serve. That's one thing I don't do. No one is too good to give out the food. No one is too good to give out the mask, too good or too bad. Anybody can do it. As long as you do it honestly, effectively, and do it with a good heart. You know, listen, you want to come help me out? You know, you that guy that the whole community might shun upon, but I won't turn you around. If you want to come help me do something positive, join us.
Well, before we leave, please tell our viewers, if a young person wants to be connected with you guys, what exactly do they do and what's the criteria for them?
Okay, if they want to be connected to the center, all you got to do is come in and ask for me, period. That's the only requirement. And from there, we'll find out what you can do, what you like to do. For the most part, I'm big, the young people to tell you, I'm really big on putting kids to work and putting them in paid internships. I like to see kids with a few dollars in their pocket. I think that makes a tremendous difference. So you'll see many of my kids bragging, we work, we get paid. Mr. Thompson getting us paid. It might be, and sometimes it's no more than $50, $80. You know, in the case of some of youth, they're getting about $166 each week, but it's always appreciative. But any kid, you don't have to have no A in math. If you got a purpose, if you got an idea, if you got a genuine wanting to be a part of something positive, step in the direction for you. We'll find something for you to do.
All right.
For you to be a part of.
Clyde Thompson, who is the program director at Butler Community Center Directions for Youth, our guest here on Open. Thank you so much for sharing with us this morning. If you don't know, Directions for Youth has definitely played an important part in feeding our community. Over 75,000 meals have been given to our community through the hands of young people. Clyde, thanks a lot. Directions for Youth, keep up the great work.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Now, thank you. Yes. And listen out. If you want more information about Directions for Youth, we encourage you, please follow them on social media at DFOYINC. Once again, DFOYINC. We encourage you, don't go anywhere. Open will continue with more show coming up right after this. And welcome back. The Nighttime series is actually a collection of poetry and short stories. It's a collection of personal poems and short stories that are aimed at providing a safe haven to readers who experience frequent emotional uneasiness by providing a beacon of hope in the form of personal experiences, both fictional as well as non-fictional. Joining us now is a very special guest to talk about her work, and it's the author and poet, Brianna Lopez, who joins us now here on Open. And Brianna, good to have you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us and being here with us. And for our viewers, we want to know a little bit more about your work and more particularly what you call the Nighttime series.
Yeah, for sure. So my book was kind of a way for me to not only express my anxiety that I deal with on a daily basis, but to also kind of put it on a platform that could help people that are just like me dealing with the same things but may not have the same platform to kind of voice it on. So I kind of wanted to build that platform to reach out to other people to help them get through it in the same way that I'm still managing to get through it in my daily life.
And so when you talk about managing to get through some things in your daily life, obviously you speak about your personal experiences. What are some of the personal experiences that you unpack in the book without giving the whole book away to readers? But what are some of the things that you've unpacked in that book?
Yeah, so one of the main pieces that really sticks with me and my entire family, I discussed I discussed a loss that my family experienced a year ago. And it was just really traumatic for us. And it was the first time anything like that had ever happened to us. So I kind of delve into that in like a fictional story kind of way, and other things beyond loss, just about heartbreak that I've experienced and just anxiety and depression, things like that, that I feel like people should be able to hear about in a way that will help them relate to it.
Yeah. One of the ways that your writing is described is in raw form. Talk to us about that rawness.
Yeah, so basically when I sat down to write this book, I just wanted to be as real as possible. I didn't want it to be so full of like analogies and metaphors. Like I wanted it to be exactly what I was feeling written down on paper for somebody to really relate to in its most raw form. And that's exactly what it is. I wrote down the night that I wrote it, the date, and I just wrote what I was feeling in that moment. And I barely like changed any of the wording to make it seem more like poetic. I just wrote what I felt, and that is exactly what the reader is reading, what I wrote on that exact day.
Why did you feel it was important to get this book out? Many people say, listen, we wait to the latter years of life to actually write a book. But for you, you're a young lady who says, listen, I'm going to write it. I'm going to write it early. What was the impetus for you in saying, I'm going to write this early?
I think writing it at this early point in my life is what is going to help it reach more people who maybe don't have someone that is my age that they can relate to with anxiety, with depression, or just experiencing these same emotions as them. A lot of kids my age don't have someone like that to look up to. And if they do, maybe it's like a therapist that's like in their mid-30s or something like that. It's not someone who can really relate to them and has really, or is really in the same stage of life as them. So that's kind of why I wanted to get it out early, is so that I could be so similar to the people who I'm trying to reach.
How does it feel for you being a local indie author?
It is a very great experience. I'm so happy I did it. It is kind of frustrating at times because it's hard to reach as many people as I want to, but I think it's such a rewarding experience to see the people that are reading my book really enjoying it, and the reviews I get are really great. And so I'm just grateful for the experience.
So where do you go from here, given the fact that you got this book out, and of course, obviously, you're promoting it and letting people know a little bit about your life story and carrying that message forward? But beyond this, where do you see yourself see things playing out for you?
Well, as of now, I just kind of want to keep on trying to reach people with this book and keep on kind of promoting it. I do plan on publishing more books in the future. When exactly that will be is not 100% set yet, but for now we're just focusing on getting this book out there and helping reach people with this specific book.
You talk about different things: anxiety, depression, just the emotional wrestling that you had to do as a teenager. Looking back, what in particular was the hardest experience that you would describe having to deal with and overcome?
I would say it was probably my first panic attack, which actually really happened when I went to do like a stay away at a college. Right before I started college, I stood at a college to kind of get the experience, and I had a panic attack, and I really couldn't deal with being away from home. And it gave me so much anxiety, and I hadn't felt it in that capacity yet. So dealing with that really opened my eyes to how kind of severe anxiety can really be for people, and how somebody had to speak up on it and kind of make people feel like they can relate and they have someone who is going through the same thing as them.
So for somebody who wants to get a copy of the book, how do they go about getting the book and connecting with you?
So they can purchase a copy through Amazon or through my Etsy shop. And they can find those links in my Instagram bio, which is written by .Brianna. And the Etsy shop is where they can get signed copies, and Amazon they can just get regular copies.
Amazing work that you continue to do as a young lady. The last question I'll ask before we wrap this segment up is, what do you want people to take away from your writing?
Most of all, I just want them to take away that somebody is here for them. Like, I might not know the people that are reading my book, but I want to be here for them in any way that I can. And I'm always open. Like, my DMs are always open on Instagram if anybody wants to talk about absolutely anything. I'm always ready to be here for people. And that's really what I want them to take away from my writing, is that they are not alone.
Well, Brianna, thank you so much for sharing your story. For more information, we're going to give that at the end of the segment, but thank you for making your voice heard to a generation and a population that really needs to hear you for such a time as this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty. Well, we want to let you know that if you want more information, what you could actually do is follow her on written by .Brianna. You can follow her on Instagram, and there you can find out more about her and the writings. Brianna, once again, thank you so much for being here with us. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our show today. I want to thank all of our guests for joining us, but most of all, I want to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in. Now, if you missed any part of today's show, you can always catch the Cablecast on Bronxnet Channel 67. If you have Verizon Fios, that would be Channel 2133, or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. For all of us here on the set of Open, I am Daren Jaime saying thank you for watching. Take care. God bless. Now listen, if you want to catch a brand new episode of Open, my girl Rena Valentine will be back on Friday morning with a brand new, fresh episode of our show. Listen, stay safe, everybody. We'll take care. You take care, and we look to see you soon. Daren Jaime saying, God bless. Later.